Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good night from wherever you may be watching. It's time for this space weather update brought to you by Orion Telescopes and Binoculars. Today is July 12th, 2024. Let's jump right in. So, we're going to talk about some really interesting eruption here that occurred on Tuesday, early in the day on Tuesday, which we may actually see some sort of impact at Earth later this week. Today is Friday. But we may actually see something from this on Saturday the 13th or maybe even Sunday on the 14th. I talked a little bit about this on my Twitter X page here. If you keep your eye right here, this is SDO 193, the corona. You'll see this active region, which is numbered 3738. This is the image on the 12th, but back on the 9th, 3738 was closer to the central meridian. And if you look at this active region, you can see it kind of brightens here, and then there's also kind of this dark line or dark area of flux that actually comes out of it there. So there's some sort of eruption, a fairly weak one, and you can actually see the flux tube all the way out here to the southeasternmost portion of the disk. So there was some sort of minor eruption that took place there. And it is kind of interesting. If you look at the coronagraph imagery, you'll see right around about 6 o'clock or so on the 9th, you do see right here this very faint front. This is a coronal mass ejection, which is associated with that eruption on the Earth-facing disk. So it's hard to say exactly if we're going to see, if Earth is going, and the satellites near Earth is actually going to observe this CME. It looks like, based on just visual inspection, it does look like most of the eruption is kind of down below Earth's orbit. So NASA did look at this eruption, and this is the results for it. This is the CME scoreboard, if you're familiar with it, which is a website that CCMC and the Community Coordinated Modeling Center uses, as well as the Moon to Mars Space Weather Analysis Office, both of those NASA entities and organizations. So this is the details for this particular CME that we're looking at here. It was first seen around 6:24 on the 9th of July, which was a Tuesday. And you can see it's a very faint and slow CME seen to the southeast, and the source of that could be the eruptions in 3738 and then also in 3736 as well. So overall, this is going to be a fairly weak event, but you can see we're going to pull up just the model run of this particular eruption, and I did show this on my Twitter page if you happen to see those posts. This is the WSA Enlil output for this eruption when it was modeled or simulated. This white circle here is the sun, and then this yellow circle over here on the right-hand side is the Earth. And you can see when the CME is injected into the model, you can see that it comes out as kind of this blob. So this left panel is a top-down view of the solar system, as if you were kind of standing above the sun and looking at what is going on in the solar system. So you can see most of it is actually off this way, sort of behind Earth's orbit. And then this middle panel is kind of a side profile or side view of what is going on. And you can see that indeed this black circle, or this black shape rather, kind of looks like an oval. That represents the CME. And most of it here is going below Earth's orbit. But there is a chance you can see that some of it may clip Earth. The northernmost extent of that may clip Earth. So we'll see what happens in the coming days with that, whether or not that will actually hit Earth, something to keep an eye on. And we also have this coronal hole here. And this coronal hole is an area where high-speed stream, it's an area of open magnetic flux on the sun. And the high-speed stream kind of emanates from these regions. It's darker, sort of cooler patches in the corona, which is visible in this EUV or extreme ultraviolet imagery. So this is an area where the solar wind is kind of streaming out very quickly. And when Earth, right around, let's say, maybe on the 10th or so, this coronal hole was facing Earth and actually releasing the high-speed stream in Earth's direction. So it's going to take a few days from the 10th to actually arrive, for that high-speed stream to arrive at Earth, probably on the 13th or something like that. So the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Office has a minor geomagnetic storm watch up now, valid for the 13th of July because of the effects from this coronal hole. And we also may see effects from that CME that we just talked about. So there could be some combined effects that lead to maybe a minor geomagnetic storm or something as we head into the Saturday and Sunday time periods. Meanwhile, this is the current sort of synoptic map of the sun, and this is a little bit different than what we were looking at earlier this week. I believe I put a video out on Monday or Tuesday. So we do have quite a number of active regions now that have developed on the southeastern portion of the disk, 37, 42, 43, 45, and 47. Quite a broad area here of active regions. And we talked a little bit about MAG4 last time around the MAG4 tool out of the University of Alabama, Huntsville. So there is an indication that there is some magnetic complexity to this active region, although this particular tool is not actually separating the active regions. They're being characterized by one sort of box here. So, and you can see there's red stars that denote the actual individual active regions. So with this sort of player here on the southeast disk, and then 3738, which we had talked about as beta gamma magnetic configuration, both of these sort of on the disk at the same time has significantly increased the chances for flaring and possibly for coronal mass ejections for this week. So the next couple days should be more interesting than earlier this week when we put out a video. And we'll take a look at what has happened here on the in the coronagraph imagery over the last couple days. So this is going back to, today is the 12th, but we're going to go back to about the 10th or so and the 11th. You do see a very significant eruption here, which takes place to the north and east. This is referred to as a asymmetric halo eruption, and this started around about 2136 on the 10th, which I believe is a Wednesday. So why is it an asymmetric halo? Well, you see it sort of emanate here, and what ends up happening is, I'm going to play through this a few times. You can see a front way back over here, actually to the south and the west. So as I play through this, keep your eye over here on the right-hand side, and you can see sort of a very faint front which begins to develop. So this is a strong far-sided eruption. And how do we know that it's far-sided? Well, one clue, this is what space weather forecasters do, is they try to determine whether or not something is front-sided or back-sided. Recall that this occulting disk here in the center of the picture here is blocking out the sun, and we're only getting sort of a view of the sun in which we cannot determine if this eruption is front-sided or far-sided. So we have to sort of turn to the actual imagery of the corona that is not blocked out in order to, make that sort of judgment call. So we can look at the surface of the sun. We can also look at the EUV imagery or the extreme ultraviolet imagery to actually see if any of the sunspots or active regions on the Earth-facing disk contributed to that coronal mass ejection at the same time. So, so this is the same exact imagery, except that this time the sun is not blocked out, and we're looking at the corona. This is GOES 16, 284 angstroms. And what's nice about this particular wavelength is you can see sort of this bright sort of region, not region, but sort of bright area beyond the disk, and that allows you to see changes in the magnetic field that are happening sort of behind the sun. Sometimes with different wavelengths like this one here, STO 131, you don't get that brightening effect on the limbs or beyond the limbs. So you can't really tell if there were magnetic field changes, excuse me, behind the sun. So sure enough, recall that that CME occurred right around 21 or so Z, 21 Zulu. And if we look around in the same sort of direction over here towards the north and the east, around 2020 or so, look right here where my cursor is, right sort of beyond the northeast limb. And what you can see are these this flickering effect. So, and you don't really see anything here on the actual disk that leads you to believe that there was an eruption on the disk, right? You're just looking at this sort of flickering effect behind this magnetic field changes right there. You can see these magnetic field lines are actually sort of flickering, and they're moving, they're opening. So that is the actual sort of evidence that this particular eruption was on the far side, meaning that there was a sunspot region on the other side of the sun, not facing the Earth, that erupted and contributed to that CME. So, long story short, this particular CME here, which is it does look to be very significant, is not likely to impact Earth at all. And then we go through the rest of the imagery here. There was another sort of weaker CME here on the same sort of region to the northeast here, around 2 o'clock or so. And generally speaking, the coronagraphs are kind of quiet. So we're not anticipating too terribly much here in terms of Earth-facing activity. This is most of the data here on the 11th. And actually, let's quickly look at today's imagery to see if anything has developed today. So that looks like an interesting CME here. There's another one that took place here, and so we'll have to catch up with this. This looks like almost like a streamer that erupted very slowly. Some of these CMEs may possibly, it's around 2 o'clock or so Eastern time right now when I'm creating this video, so it's possible that some of these CMEs are actually still sort of under analysis at this very moment. So there are two CMEs of note today. One very bright one here towards the west. And we can take a quick look at the imagery to see if this may or may not be Earth-directed. So there's an eruption there occurring around 0Z or so. And then another eruption, which is this is kind of an interesting one here. You can see a front here, and then you can also see sort of a core that develops as well. So that's a very pretty, it's faint, but it's a very pretty eruption to the south and east. So there you go. So there's two eruptions that have occurred today, kind of more interesting than the last couple days. Whether or not they're Earth-directed, well, let's take a quick look as we set our time to, we're going to set this imagery to today. We'll just take a quick look. Analysis is probably still being kind of completed for these eruptions. So this is what a space weather forecaster does, is sort of compare the time that you're seeing the eruption. This was around 0Z or so, comparing the time of the eruption to the actual imagery that you're looking at. It looks like this over here, this eruption, that really bright one, seems to be associated with an eruption that occurred beyond the western limb. So probably not likely to impact Earth just by quick visual observation. And then if we take a quick look at this as well. Okay, well, that's right. So, so another eruption that is still sort of, well, looks like that occurred around 7:12 or so. One thing we can do is, and I actually talked a little bit about this in the Patreon tutorial. If you are interested, we have Patreon tutorials that go over some of the tools that we use in the space weather community. One of that is one of the tutorials that were recently sort of done is this database. So if you're interested in learning more about this database, please, there's a Patreon link at the bottom of this video that you can click on in order to, we have a video up to actually understand, just a quick tutorial on how to how to use this particular database. So this is the eruption, the really bright one off to the west. You can see the longitude is 81, and there is a chance that that particular CME will impact Mars, but not necessarily that of Earth. And then this one is the fainter one that is kind of pretty, that has that core associated with it, 612, and the analysis was completed for this one as well. So this one is likely, the longitude is minus 124, meaning that it is likely to be far-sighted. And this is a simulation actually of it. And you can see that is the direction that that particular CME is headed. So it looks like analysis was completed for this one here, and this is likely to be far-sighted. Okay, so over to the timelines. Not terribly much here is going on. We have not had any M-class flares in a couple days. That is based on what we were talking about earlier, which is sort of the characterization of these active regions here. This could change. This could definitely change. We could have some more interesting solar flares here in the next 1 to 2 days. I would not be surprised if we did have some M-class flares in the next couple days. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But right now, the solar flux is on the quieter side. It looks like the background is at M. Or excuse me, the background is at the C-class level range right now. Could be changing in the next 24 to 48 hours. And then looks like the magnetic field is on the weak side. It looks like the solar wind is so far right now on the quiet side. It looks like all of the magnetic field perturbations are less than 10 nanoteslas in all the different directions. The total magnetic field strength is only about 6 nanoteslas, so pretty background there. So nothing has really arrived at Earth. It doesn't look like. The density is on the low side. The wind speed is on the low side. It looks like 370 or so kilometers per second. Temperature is on the low side as well. And as you would expect with a generally calm solar wind, the planetary K-index, which measures the geomagnetic activity on a scale of 0 to 9, is at a 1 right now. So not much really going on here. So that's about it for this video. I think I covered everything I wanted to cover. So we'll see. The coming days might potentially be interesting with these active regions, which are due to soon rotate onto the central meridian. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Could potentially have some more interesting solar flares and some eruptions. But we're watching, the major things that we're watching right now would be this coronal hole. The effects of this coronal hole high-speed stream will probably arrive on Saturday. And potentially that CME that we had first talked about, that very faint front to the southeast, that CME was back on the 9th, which was Tuesday. So those two things may potentially lead to a minor geomagnetic storm on the Saturday-Sunday time frame. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you found this space weather briefing to be fun and informative. Please check out the links below for all of our social media accounts, and as well if you're interested in the tutorials that we have on Patreon. And if you found this video to be informative, please like and subscribe to us on YouTube. We're going to try and put out more of these videos. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you again in the next video.